All right, I think we are live. How's everyone doing? So I wanted to do another just sort of ask me anything video today, where you can certainly ask me any question that you want, about the Pokemon market, about economics, finance, TCG stuff. But you can also ask me anything about life, whatever you feel like talking about, or more broadly, just ask me anything about the Pokemon world, the online content world. We can just sort of have discussions that are interesting. So hope everyone is having a good day out there. So if you want to start asking questions, I know it'll take a little bit for people to come on in the stream. But if you guys can just let me know if the sound and everything is good. And then we can go from there. See who's here. Hey, fellow Jacob. Sterling Starber, Thrifty TCG, Northwoods TCG, Brer Owen is here. Good to see you. Yeah, so feel free to start asking your questions. I'm seeing some of them starting to come in now. Actually, I need to set up one quick thing on the video here. And then I will jump into questions. So again, as people are coming in, you can ask me anything about the Pokemon market. You can ask me anything about what it's like being a content creator, about life, whatever people feel like knowing about. Okay, should be good. Let's see. I hope this chat works today. Been having issues with the chat. People are coming in. Ooh, there we go. Okay. Brer says, what is your opinion on the tag team alts from Sun and Moon versus Rainbow Rare from Sun and Moon as an investment? So I don't know all the prices of all of those cards offhand. There's a lot of different cards, particularly when we talk about Rainbow Rare. So much of investment, has to do with what the current prices are, rather than, I don't think about categories as like rainbow rares are going to be better than alt arts or alt arts are going to be rainbow rares. It all depends on the starting price point. Generally speaking, if I can get a rainbow rare PSA 10 for 30, 40, 50 bucks or $100 or $80, and then the same alt art of the same Pokemon, if we want to take like the Latios, Latias, it's going for $600, $700 in PSA 10 or $500 in PSA 10. I certainly think that the rainbow rare is a better value there. But that doesn't mean that it's going to outperform in the long run. Again, a lot of that's just going to have to do with demand. But where would I, put my bet if I had to bet on one or the other? And certainly as a collector, what would I rather own at the price? It would be the rainbow rare. And in fact, the rainbow rares can actually have more difficult pull rates depending on the set when you look at how many rainbow rares there are, and the difficulty to pull a rainbow rare. So that's what I would say. But none of those types of questions have definite answers. I would definitely bet on rarity and would bet on the fact that I think rainbow rares are probably going to have a period again when people are collecting them and maybe a little bit more interested into them as there are right now. Whereas I think a lot of the alt arts are pretty hot, and have the potential, or probably more likely to get less hot than the rainbow rares getting, or less hot from where they're already at, that sort of thing. So, but again, if the prices were more similar between the rainbow rares and the alt arts, I would give you a completely different answer. It's just the price discrepancy there is pretty significant, I think. Jacob says, I'm on the YouTube grind lately. I am. Yeah, I have a little bit more time, as I've been telling people. I've been reducing some of the hours I've been working at my other job and spending more time doing this. That's my plan. And despite some few haters out there and some of the negativity that I have to endure to be a public figure, something that does not come naturally to me. I'm a very introverted person. I really enjoy debates and conversations and ideas and interacting with people around ideas, around conversations. And I do really look forward to these, and I'm always interested in like, what are people going to ask, and what are we going to get into today? And it's just fun seeing familiar faces, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate all of the supportive people and the supportive comments, and it's really nice. Let's see. Pavlovich 24 says, what are your thoughts on the high-end Japanese full art supporters? So, I mean, you could give me a few specific cards. Maybe we could look them up on eBay and I could give you more specific thoughts. Generally speaking, from what I've seen, there are certain Japanese sets that seem to be, there's a little bit more interest in some of the full arts and some of the booster boxes. And then there are other Japanese booster boxes that seem to be going a little bit more reasonably cheaply. And some of the cards inside are going for more cheap. So it really depends on, which full art cards you're talking about. I've heard that, there are certain cards in Japan that became very, very popular in Japan. There were a lot of modern Japanese collectors that really, it wasn't even the West driving up some of the prices, is my understanding, on some of these full art cards. And that some of it was actually just coming from a big increase in Japanese collector interest in the singles. So my general thoughts on them, I definitely would not say undervalued. I think that people really like them. I mean, there are going to be some that are probably undervalued relative to their English counterparts, but I wouldn't say like full art supporters, full arts in general, are like undervalued right now. Definitely not. Now, would I say they're overvalued? That's definitely tougher to say, because they could, maintain the level of demand. I think that they were, I was surprised, and I've said this on my channel a number of times, but, a year and a half ago or now, or however long ago it was, I was always surprised at how, even going back into like the Wizards of the Coast era, when we talk about like the gym sets, the gym challenge sets, I was always a little bit surprised at how much people didn't like the holo gym trainers from those sets, because I really liked them, because I really like the gym trainers. And owning a gym trainer in like a holofoil form was really cool to me. And when we talk about like the pre TCG stuff, or the non-Pokemon TCG stuff, there's a number of full art, cards from like 1997, 1998, 1999, Japanese cards that feature, Misty, Ash, Brock, Team Rocket cards that I always really, really liked. And I always kind of felt like the reason that some of these trainers didn't get the value that Pokemon did is because they didn't have really good looking holo type options. And so when they started making full arts for some of these things, not only was it the first time, not really the first, it was the first time in the TCG, they do have some of these like non-TCG type options, but of some of these popular trainer characters, it does make sense why people would really want those and really like those. Not only are they, pretty good looking and hollows and colorful and have interesting arts, but they're of characters that people like. People also like the trainers, not just the Pokemon. So, that's my general take on those. Although I think now the market is really shifted, and I wouldn't personally call it undervalued at the moment, probably, if I had to, just give my personal opinion. Doodles in the Memory says, hey, I've had a question on my mind for a while. What do you think modern cards in Japanese that never came to English, such as tag team cards or character rares? So it's always interesting, because sometimes some of these cards eventually do come, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they come as like promos all of a sudden. what do I think of them? I think if there's a really good looking one that has really popular Pokemon and they genuinely never do print it in English, that could definitely be a card that's worth a little bit over its counterparts because you can only get that in Japanese. I think that makes sense. How much more, I don't know, but I would pay a little bit more. I would look to target that. A great example was that sort of gold card Charizard that, for a long time, no English variant existed from like the tag team gold set. Excuse me. Matthew says, how was dinner on Friday? It was good. I do Shabbat dinner every Friday night with my girlfriend, and she was a little upset at how long I went, but she forgave me. I didn't want to like interrupt the people who were on or cut the conversation short, so I tried to manage it as best I could. What do you think of EX cards and EX Dragon, the Latias, Rayquaza? Yeah, really great set, really great cards. Love them. Again, I don't think that they're necessarily like underpriced particularly, but they're great cards. Dude as a membrane says, and I do like it. I like first appearance cards. When we look at a set like EX Dragon or Sandstorm, some of these earlier original Nintendo EX sets do have some first appearance cards of Pokemon from that third generation, and I like that. I also like the fact that it still has slightly different, but basically the border of the E-Series WOTC era stuff, and I like the transition there. Just as someone who's just loves Pokemon cards, is an appreciator. It's kind of cool to have that sort of its own era because of the layout and the design of those cards versus what then it looked like after those first few sets. So I think that's adds a little bit of coolness to me. Michael G says, great day on Wall Street today. Yeah, Wall Street's been tough, but it's, to be honest, it's feels well overdue. The evaluations of companies, the high stock prices, the never ending things going up. And then you look at charts and you look at statistics of how many people are day trading and retail investors in the market pushing up things. It's very hard to it's a bit precarious. It's very hard to know where true value is at or where some sort of new stabilizing point is at. But when the market goes down, these are particularly in a market that is not going to just disappear. When you own and you're in really good companies, yes, it can present potential buying opportunities. Of course, you never know when exactly to buy because it could continue to drop before it stabilizes. But even if you don't buy and you just hold, the market will stabilize at some point, and then we'll get ready for to slowly or quickly rebound, or we'll have to see. But I watch it every day. I watch my stock portfolio every day. I try to read as much as I can, and I listen to what people are saying about it, and take in as much information as I can. But I would say, and this is a common thing, right? It's just, if it's really frustrating you or upsetting you or making you anxious, often it's best just like not to look, particularly if you're not actually going to actively buy or sell anything. It can be better to just like take a break, go for a walk, try to have faith that it'll rebound someday. A&M says, how did studying psychology make you reflect on yourself and your own behaviors and introspective thoughts? Do you feel it has made you a better person? Studying psychology. So let's see. yeah, I mean, being a therapist and studying psychology, or just like, I studied psychology and philosophy, and like studying that sort of stuff, so much of it is thinking about and having conversations with other people about, particularly because my concentration was in moral psychology and moral philosophy, so it was lots of conversations about ethics and morality. It definitely makes you reflect a ton on yourself, on what other people are like, on the differences. Do I feel like it's made me a better person? Ooh, better person. I think, I'm a work in progress. There are things about myself that I find frustrating and not optimal. um, um, but I was watching the Mr. Rogers. I'm a big Mr. Rogers fan, and I was watching I watched the documentary on him a few years ago, and it made me cry like a number of times. But I was watching the just a movie. I forget what it's called, the one with Tom Hanks where he plays him, like, last night, and you know he always I find him to be a super fascinating character. I had a professor, a mentor, who I used to go over to his house once a week for dinner. He used to cook for some of the students and the faculty. We would come over to his house and we would have dinner together, like a home cooked meal in college once a week, and we would discuss life and philosophy and politics and economics. And then we would, after dinner, he was Baha'i. He was a real, very religious person of the Baha'i faith. And we used to then say a bunch of prayers and sing. And he reminds me a lot of Fred Rogers, a lot of Mr. Rogers. And what those two people taught me is that you have to work pretty hard on yourself and to consistently sort of work on yourself in order to be a good person, or try and figure out what that means. Now, there's also, like, how do we define what a good person is? And depending on who you ask, you're going to get, you could ask one person and get three different answers, let alone if you ask three different people, you might get 9 answers, right? So it's just a really tough thing to answer with any certainty. I guess, to me, at this moment, just not being a jerk is like what comes up first and foremost. And to me, like, what being a jerk is like being degrading to other people, putting them down, making them feel badly about themselves unnecessarily, overly critically, being cruel to other people, trying to shame and I think that, it's something that when the times in my life when I've been cruel or critical or shamed someone else, it was when I've felt the most attacked, or my ego has been the most bruised, or I've felt like someone is basically, they're a huge jerk and they're attacking and trying to destroy and make me feel terrible. I don't think I've ever attacked or put down someone who was generous and gentle and kind. So in that sense, I suppose I'm not a terrible person. I'm not going out into the world hurting people, particularly when they're very generous and kind human beings. But dealing with very difficult people and difficult interactions is where I feel is why I'm uncomfortable, would ever be uncomfortable calling first of all. And, Mr. Rogers and his wife and my mentor and so many people who, I think these are people who are really disciplined and work really, really hard. Mr. Rogers used to call it was his ministry, that he, his show. And even though he didn't talk at all about religion, the Christian sort of values and ideas that he believed in is what was the basis of that show. And that show has been a godsend, a support system to so many kids across the world for so many years, particularly, for every kid, but, or most kids who are watching it, but particularly for kids who didn't have parents who loved them, frankly, and cared for them and believed in them and these types of things. You know, a lot of the jerks and the people I'm talking about today, the people who are jerks out on the internet or it, you know, often it's because they aren't feeling loved, they aren't feeling cared for, they aren't feeling important. They're not bad people. No one's a bad person. And I'm the same way. Like when I'm being a jerk or attacking someone else, it's the same. It's because of that. That's why I'm doing that, is because I'm feeling scared or hurt or belittled or, you know, so I don't know. I guess to answer your question, Aiden, like I think about a lot of that stuff. It's important to me. And I do find that, I mean, when I'm surrounded by, it takes work to create a community and for people to not be toxic and for like everyone to sort of do their part, you know, and I guess those are the lessons and the things I've thought most about, you know, as a psychologist, because I think that's what's most important. I think things like there are people who are very good at things, but they're huge jerks, right? They're very talented, they're very bright, they're very skilled at something, but they use that power and that skill and or that fame to demean other people, to put other people down, to take advantage of other people. And why someone like Fred Rogers or Mr. Rogers is such an inspiration, in my opinion, is that he became famous and had a bunch of power, but didn't, and I'm sure he worked every single day not to abuse it. And I'm sure he did abuse it at times because he's a human being, but like he obviously worked extremely hard not to abuse that power, took it seriously, understood it, and worked to treat every person that he came in contact with as a, you know, important person and treated each of those people with respect. And yeah, so that's what comes up for me when you ask that. Pokemon says, Jake, great content. Do you know enough about 90s card-ass Dragon Ball cards to do a video / segment on them? Or do you know any resources with good info? I would have to like do a refresher. I don't remember the websites offhand. Retrospec, who is someone in the Discord a while back and as someone who's still active on this channel and active in the community, had showed some of us a website that I don't remember detailing. It's very complicated. There are like many different sets, and it's a mess, to be completely honest with you, trying to figure out what all of them are, but they're really cool. And you know, you can definitely shoot me a message and I could try to look it up and maybe provide that to you or something, you know, on Instagram or somewhere else if I can remember the website. But it's something that because there's so many different sets and so many different variations, that it's definitely not an easy thing to like have all of that memorized. But Nick, Retrospec, would be someone who let's see. Yeah, Retrospec would be someone, if you want to reach out to him, who could definitely help you. He's much more knowledgeable about that stuff than I am, because he went deeper on it for sure. Let's see. Northwoods TCG says, what's your outlook with the holiday ETBs such as Hidden Fates, Champions Path, Shining Fates celebrations, and upcoming Pokemon Go? What are my outlooks on the ETBs such as Hidden Fates, Champions Path, Shining Fates celebrations, and Pokemon Go? 50-50. You know, I'll be interested to see how Pokemon Go does, how much they print, what the prices are going to be. I don't view these things, and I don't see a rocket to the moon. I also think these are all, you know, very good products. I think Hidden Fates in particular, when you look at the singles market, there's just a lot of supply still available, but I also think it's somewhat bottomed out, but it may be there for quite a long time until it recovers. As far as sealed, I'm not sure exactly where the ETBs are now, but I think that unless they've moved up suddenly recently, they were sitting for quite a while at around the same price point. Although I will say that the ETBs have gone up in value since the beginning, whereas actually a lot of the singles and a lot of the graded cards were actually cheaper now than they were when Hidden Fates like first came out, which is, shows you how sealed can outperform singles, particularly. It really shows you when there's so much stuff opened and all of those singles kind of flood the market and tons of people grade them, that there can be more demand for the sealed product. So more and more product for people to keep opening or just keep sealed than demand for the actual cards themselves. Now, how that plays out in the long run, I do think that the price of sealed and the price of the raw cards are somewhat related. And that the fact that Hidden Fates cards have kind of come down in value is probably part of what has kept the ETBs from, continuing to go up or recovering their losses. Because obviously the ETBs were quite a bit higher too at one point there before reprints and other sorts of things as well. Champion's Path feels maybe fairly expensive, if I had to just guess. Shining Fate's definitely on the cheap side, but the least popular, kind of people feeling the most let down. There's positives and negatives to everything. I don't look at any of those sets and say one is way overvalued, one is way undervalued. I guess I would like Hidden Fate's probably the best just because it's had the most time to be out there. But there's so much supply and there's so much of it graded that it could be many years till we see any significant movement, or it's just going to take a really decent surge of demand, over the next few months to buy up all that raw supply and all that graded supply that continues to hit the market. You can just go onto sites like Pokemetrics or elsewhere and see, just the huge amount of CGC and PSA graded, evolutions and Hidden Fates as compared to like everything else, and then Champion's Path, there's been so much graded. Sets like Shining Fates has had a lot of Vivid Voltage as well. Celebration's a lot less because of the price point. Let's see. Chapel says, Dan has a question. Catch them all collectibles. Can't stick around, but what's the lowest you think we will see a main set booster box go to over the next 5 years? Yeah, I have no idea. So I wouldn't even know how to estimate something like that. So I'm going to have to pass, unfortunately, Dan. If we want to, as like the worst possible case scenario, I'd be surprised if any of the unlimited bot, like WOTC bot, what are you talking about here? Oh, main set. So, somehow I read that as WOTC. Sorry, I'm a little bit tired. So we're talking about any of the main sets. Worst case scenario would be probably, worst case scenario could be very low. Worst case, like realistic scenario, would probably be similar to what happened before with like $65, maybe to $70 type stuff. If you're buying large quantities, if distributors get stuck with it, if distributors ever get stuck with the product because there's either Pokemon way overproduces way too many, or the demand very suddenly and abruptly shrinks, both of which is probably unlikely. Then you could see distributors being willing to part with like a pallet or like huge quantities or like even lower than that, just trying to get rid of it in like in the 50s, maybe, who knows? Obviously we've seen examples of boxes and all sorts of things selling considerably lower, but not Pokemon, but, in other hobbies, most recently like Panini DBZ, I remember buying that, funny enough, that stuff is now rebounded and is, not very expensive, but, that was on clearance liquidation lots at like $5 a box for a while, these types of things. So, but that's what I would say. Realistically, I would be very, very disappointed and sad. I'd be very sad if a box went below that. It would really have to be like Pokemon made a huge mistake with printing way too much, or just like a sudden shift in demand and interest, which would also just be sad. Chevel says, hey there, Pokenomics. I know you've been asked multiple times before, but general thoughts about E-Series English and Japanese, under or overvalued right now. Do you like them? I would not say undervalued anymore. They were undervalued a year and a half ago or so. They've come up in price quite a bit. I think relative to the English side, the prices make a decent amount of sense to me. When you get into sort of like unlimited versus first edition, should the unlimited ones have premiums because they're rare? Like, you can get into those discussions and it becomes more of that demand versus rarity, which is just very hard to say. Personally, I don't view those as super undervalued, but I'm always picking those up if I can get them in good auction. Like, I do think they're undervalued as compared to other eras potentially, but not like the Japanese as compared to the English necessarily. Oh no, you're asking, sorry, E-Series English and Japanese. Yeah, I mean, I like them. I always have liked E-Series. I think E-Series, I think if you can pick stuff up, again, this is not, and I want to make this clear because I got a comment on my last video, confused about like, do I think investing in vintage is not like that you can't invest in vintage, or you can't make money on vintage? Those are two very different things. Like, you could certainly make money, and there's a decent chance that you will. There's a reasonable chance that if you buy most vintage cards in 5 to 10 years, they'll be more expensive than they are now. The point is that how would that do as compared to putting that money in like the S&P 500 or something that's far less risky, that probably makes much more sense for most people. That's really the crux of that video, right? This channel was founded and developed to help fundamentally collectors navigate the market in an effective way, where they were able to build the biggest, most valuable collection that they wanted for the cheapest amount that would hold the best value long term, right? Nowhere in there does that mean that it's an investment, or that it's a good investment. But that doesn't mean that you can't make some money potentially, certainly if you're buying under market and flipping it, but even holding stuff long term. And that's been my, stance since the first video. You can go back and watch that, when I was talking about, now, does that mean that 5 to 10% or even like the majority of the hobby couldn't outperform the stock market in the next 5 to 10 years? It absolutely could. The stock market tanks, and we see a 40% retrace that takes 3, 4, 5 years for it to recover, like we've seen, in the past. There's plenty of things in the Pokemon market that might do better than that over time, but it's also possible that what we're seeing in the stock market right now might be a little bit of a blip. And although we're in an unprecedented bull run in the stock market, in terms of the length of time since 2008, it's possible that it goes up a decent amount more before, and that Pokemon stays completely flat or even declines a little bit. And then when you take into account taxes and all these other things, so that's where I'm coming from. Okay. So that's not me telling you out there that you need to panic and that I think that it's highly likely that your cards are going to go to zero. Again, there's always a middle ground, so that's what I'd say. Thrifty TCG says, wasn't the Darkrai / Umbreon in a tin? I'm not sure who you were talking to. Maybe you were talking to someone else. Lassie says, thoughts on Rebel Clash sealed product. Wouldn't be surprised if sometime soon it randomly becomes a €250 booster box. It feels like a lot to me, just because, so much of it depends on that supply side. Like, if we think Rebel Clash is going to be printed much, much less, which is possible. Like, if they don't do more reprints of Rebel Clash, and Rebel Clash is just printed a lot less than like Champions Path and On, which seems to have been more heavily printed. And we're seeing that reflection in also like cards that are being graded and just the amount of supply we're seeing out there, and some of the lower prices. Like when we talk about like Vivid Voltage, and On for the booster boxes, it is possible that, Sword and Shield base, Rebel Clash, like even if they're not the most popular sets from the Sword and Shield era that that they actually really do well, or they increase in value quicker because there's just less supply. And that's where, because nobody has those answers, Losty, nobody knows exactly how much supply is out there. The best thing you can do is sort of just like track the market, but you never know, is there one person out there who's like holding a bunch of that, distributor, who's then going to like put it back onto the market. And the concern about something like Rebel Clash is, if it's readily available, are people really going to be paying $250 for that set when they could buy like Evolving Skies for like $150, $160, $180? I'm just not sure. Certainly I wouldn't think there'd be too many people doing that to like open and enjoy the set. But and also once you start getting to some of those higher price points, like that, 250 euros, you're saying here, like $300 ish, price point, I also worry that just a lot less will be opened, and that the booster box breakers may not be able to sell the packs as easily at those prices. And so it doesn't liquidate the product as much, thus not making it as rare over time, et cetera, et cetera. It'll make it harder for it to grow. But is it impossible? Absolutely not. Anything's possible with these sets in this time period. Any things can very quickly double, triple up, particularly when there isn't that much available on the market. I mean, we're seeing people do buyouts and just obliterating the supply of certain singles. I'm watching modern singles, and then the modern single just goes up like 30% in a week or two because someone's obviously buying that card out. And people can do the exact same thing with these booster boxes and have a huge impact. Then the question is, how deep is the market at 250 euro? There are lots of people who are willing to pay it at that price, or just a few. And often when a lot of buyouts push the price up, it does make it harder for it then to be pushed up again, unless the person who's buying all of that isn't interested in like putting it back on the market, and that there are other people who are still interested at those prices. So some thoughts. Voljean says, do you think Japanese will grow up in popularity and prices in the short-term future? What I would say about Japanese, and I'm thinking about doing a video and maybe a presentation on this on Patreon at some point, once I it's so hard to find all of the data. It takes like so much freaking effort and work, honestly, like hours and hours and hours of scouring to put this stuff together. But like trying to do a whole blueprint and roadmap of why some sets and some Japanese sealed has done really well, and why some Japanese singles seem to have done really well when we talk about like modern set cards, and why some has lagged behind or not gone up as much. And so I would say the stuff that's lagging and hasn't gone up as much, there could be some potential there. But as a whole category, I don't think that I think that there are tons of new Japanese collectors and people who are preferring Japanese and are interested in Japanese than ever before. Will that continue? Zero clue is the honest answer. I mean, that would be the type of thing that to be honest with you, your big influencers are going to have like a lot more impact. Like does Pokerev and Leonhardt and Logan Paul and all, do they open Japanese stuff and talk a lot about Japanese and keep people interested and engaged and open more of that product on their channel? Like that's the stuff that's going to have more of an impact on that demand, than anything else. Jacob says, as someone who mainly only collects EX series cards, what are your thoughts on that era of cards? I know you've talked a bit about it and you weren't sure if enough people had nostalgia for that era. Yeah, I mean, you're kind of like, those are the pluses and minuses. The pluses, low supply, the negatives, potentially lower demand than Wizards of the Coast. And we're just going to have to see how that plays out over time. If I absolutely were forced to guess, I would say that the current prices relative to the current price of Wizards of the Coast is probably what we will see going forward. And that there isn't some sort of huge shift of like, this stuff's so much more undervalued than Wizards of the Coast. There might be some examples where that isn't true. I could be totally wrong about that, but that would be my best guess. So Whereas if you had asked me a year and a half ago to 2 years ago, I would have said, original Nintendo EX, Black and White, Diamond and Pearl, and E series feels undervalued as compared to base, Jungle, Fossil, and the Neos, largely because that's, as everyone jumped back into, so many new people jumped back into the hobby, that was the stuff that they understood, the stuff they grew up with, the stuff everyone flooded into. And it took a little bit of time to, for that demand to move into some of these other areas. Just kind of a common pattern. That would be my narrative or explanation for why that probably was the case. Steve Thompson says, do you think we harp on the conversation of investability too much as a way to justify our collecting? We love this stuff so much that other things being a better investment is a moot point, I think. Do you think we harp on the conversation too much as a way to justify our collecting? I mean, I think that it can definitely be possible that people are like more bullish than they should be. And this is not what people want to hear, but that people are more bullish than they should be on the investability of the stuff that they own because they like it so much that they assume that other people are always going to love it, like these types of things. Now, I think for someone like myself, I think I'm very cautious and skeptical, and I might be even overly bearish sometimes because I'm so concerned about my own bias kind of affecting me there. But at the end of the day, as I've said, like, this is everything I put into Pokemon, all the money that I have into Pokemon. It's an experiment in investing, collecting, market activity. It's not something that I am depending on financially. It's not something that I think it's something that I think is quite risky and should be done if you absolutely love and enjoy this stuff. And for the majority of people, I think, the vast majority of people, particularly now, I don't worry about this nearly as much. I mean, when I started my channel and about 3 or 4 months into the start of my channel, that's when I feel like my channel was the most probably needed, was just sort of like be careful, because with that sort of message, because of just how much the narrative of you can life-changing money is going to be made for everyone here, very quickly. And I think most people have a more realistic attitude. And I think the majority of people probably left in the hobby at this point, because I think a lot of people have left, are here on this channel or in these types of spaces because they're first and foremost a collector, and they're looking to navigate sort of how best to financially collect, and build the best collection they can for the least amount of money they can, rather than they're looking to sell their collection someday and cash out and make a lot of money. Although, if you're doing that, if your primary reason is to make money, or it's like 50-50, to each their own, honestly. But you can take my opinion for what it's worth on opinion. Hey, I'm live streaming. I'm online right now. Hold on one second, guys. All right. Sorry about that. Alex P says, thoughts on S. Pratt's recent video on modern investments and how content creators are pushing the invest in modern sealed. I haven't seen that. That would be interesting. I have not watched his channel for a while. I've not watched a lot of content for a while. But I'll check out that video. I mean, my immediate response, I have no idea what he said in that video, but my immediate response is that there's been lots of those channels for the last 2 years. So I'm not sure if it's happening more now. It's such a difficult thing because you don't know, the YouTube algorithm is a mysterious thing. So it's not going to, no one person, you have, everyone out there has their own sort of YouTube algorithm at work, which is showing them specific videos. So they depending on the which videos are being shown, you may think there's a ton of those videos right now, or there's very few and it's all vintage. And, it's, and I so I don't really know. I think Rudy is the biggest and has always been the biggest proponent in investing and investing in modern sealed. And that's modern sealed Magic, modern sealed Pokemon, whatever it is. Weiss Schwarz, Force of Will, Flesh and Blood, Metazoo, that's his thing. That's what he's always talked about. And, it's that and then vintage, like vintage singles, vintage raws. When we talk about Magic, I don't think he invests in anything else. But, it's vintage reserve list and modern sealed is sort of what he does. So, and he definitely has the biggest impact. And I find most people who talk about, modern sealed tend to agree with Rudy or think similarly to that sort of thing. Royal Champion says, I look 5 years older. Oh boy, take care of my health. Oh, sorry if I look roughed up. I'm doing okay. I appreciate that. Let's see what else we got here. TCG Caravan says, thoughts on the new Precious Collector Box promo? I'm not even familiar with it. Let me take a look and see if I've even seen it. I may just not know the name. Let me take a look. What's it called? Precious Collector Box. I don't see anything yet on it. Huh. So sorry about that. But if anyone wants in the chat to share their opinions on that, go for it. There are a lot of cards and there are always brand new cards coming out, and I'm definitely not up on all of them. RMM card says, do you think the overall interest and popularity of the TCG is going to decrease or increase over the next few years? 50-50 right now. I think there's a decent chance that it will decrease in the next 5 years and maybe increase in the next 10. I don't think it's going to like fall off a cliff decrease, but I wouldn't be surprised if more people kind of are just getting back into it, experiencing it now, kind of are part of this hype boom period. And then we have a period where maybe some people kind of leave, or just particularly more casual people just kind of move on to the next thing. And then, maybe we reach a point where that stops happening and then the hobby starts growing again more. That would be, one theory. Come with lots of different theories. And then we obviously just don't know what type of events might happen. I do think that all of the businesses in the space and all of the influencers in the space and, creating new card companies and, different things like from PSA to CGC to Collecticon to, Liquid Marketplace and, whatever you think of the job they're doing. But like those types of things, like having more of that will make it is an argument for why demand might continue to increase, or they might be able to keep a lot of the people who are already here interested, just because there'll be a lot of advertising and money around that. Jacob says, how's the Patreon going, Jake? It's going pretty good. Tomorrow will be the office hours that we're trying to do weekly, where I just kind of meet with people. I'm just kind of there for an hour. People can come in, ask questions, just kind of hang out, talk about the hobby. And then at the end of the month, we'll be doing our, 3-hour live Zoom call talking about the market. I'll give some sort of presentation during that. So it's good. Marcel says, what are your thoughts on Japanese Neo Shinings versus English Shinings, especially first edition? Um, so for a while, I really felt that the Japanese Neo Shinings were undervalued given the difficulty to pull them. But they get pretty high prices. I wouldn't say I would say that all of those cards seem fairly appropriately valued. If I own quite a few of those cards, if I were have to guess, I wouldn't expect some huge explosion on those cards because they're quite expensive and it would take a lot for them to continue to get more and more expensive, but they're also very beloved, quite rare, and particularly the Japanese ones, and they're some of the key cards from the hobby. And I think always will be important to people. And when you get outside of like the Charizard and really high grade, a lot of them are reasonably affordable, particularly in sort of light play condition. We're talking $100 to $300 for a lot of the cards, which is a decent amount, but again, that's about the price of a modern booster box, at least the lower end one. So I think a lot of people can afford $100 to $300 card. Joe Schmo says, hey, Pokenomics, what's the difference between the Expedition Mew Reverse 19 and the Reverse 55? What's more rare? So neither is going to be more rare than the other one. One is a reverse of like the holo. So in E-Series, they have the holo versions of the rares, and then they have the non-holo versions of the rares. And most of the non-holo rares are the same art as the holo rares, although some aren't. There are a few that they've added in. It's confusing, but Mew is one that would fit that, and that's why they would have that. And I didn't know it was 55. I can check, but I'm taking your word for it that your information there is accurate. And if your information there is accurate, that would be the explanation, is that the 19 would be a reverse version of the holo version technically, and the 55. Now, do I think that maybe more people would prefer the reverse of the holo version? Maybe. It seems a little ridiculous as they're the same exact card basically, but and as far as rarity, they should have the same rarity for all that I know, unless Pokemon, and I don't think anyone would know this, but you have to open so much of this product to find that out. But unless Pokemon made, for some reason, the reverse holos of the holo rares harder to get, which they shouldn't have, it should have the exact same, difficulty to pull. And that includes all of the commons and uncommons, and not for Expedition, but for the other sets that, the crystal cards as well, the crystal reverses as well. Alan the Kraken says, what specific trait do you think gives the most value for high-end cards, excluding scarcity and price memory? What specific? Okay, so a specific trait of the card do I think gives most value for high-end cards, excluding scarcity and price memory? I mean, maybe Pokemon, like the specific Pokemon, but I'm not sure there would be one. It's going to really depend, obviously, because there's some cards that the Pokemon's not that great, but like it's such a historic card, or it's like a first appearance, or it's a card that everyone, or the art is so amazing, everyone just loves it, right? Like there's always going to be, but if I had to pick probably one, it would be Pokemon. The Pokemon that's on it seems pretty, generally speaking, if you throw a Charizard on there, it's going to be, quite a bit more expensive than a card without a Charizard, given all else equal, Martin Larson says, hi, Jake, do you think a Team Rocket Unlimited booster box is likely to hold value from here on now? I know there are a lot of them, but there's also a lot of people who want vintage boxes. I wish I could answer that, for you, Martin, but it's definitely one of these. That's one of those crystal ball questions. I don't have a strong feeling either way. I think that if you really want that for your collection, you could make a case. I think picking that up now isn't stupid. Like, it's not ridiculous given the price declines, given maybe some of the over negativity towards vintage right now in the hobby and in the market, in my opinion. But it was so overly positive and vintage was so overly hyped, like these types of boxes, just because they're just not there. There's just so many of them still that it's a little bit tough. But with all of these booster box channels, continuing to need to open these and more being opened up all the time, I think picking up some of them at pretty decent value and holding them probably as good, of a bet as most things in the hobby, to be honest with you, as far as probably appreciating over time. But again, it's definitely crystal ballish. That would be my overall take. I'm definitely not super negative on them. I'm also not like, how could they possibly be so cheap? It's still quite a bit of money for how many still exist. And, you have to remember, like, I'm just not like, as a collector, I just way prefer PSA and binders. I just always have. Like, if I'm spending $8,000 on a sealed box versus I'm getting the entire set in like PSA 9/PSA 10 quality, I'm always choosing the PSA 9/PSA 10 quality, plus maybe even just throw in there like a near mint binder set, because I really like the cards. I like looking at the cards, and that just brings me more joy in the hobby. So, but that's not investment advice, that, or investment opinions. It's just subjectively what I prefer. Particularly, because when you open that box, you might get a lot of 8s, and 9s, and you definitely wouldn't get a complete set. UCB says, it's weird how Expedition did reverse holos, but the 19, oh wait, sorry, just that isn't a question, just comments. Bolshin says, what are your thoughts about no rarity cards? I've never been a massive fan of no rarity. But there are some people who are a massive fan of no rarity, particularly on the high end. And I get it. People have a lot of money and want the rarer first ever printing of base set. I get why they go after that and why they like it. That's just what I would say. Pikachu says, at Pokenomics, if you went full-time, how do you feel that would affect your success, happiness, and personal collection goals? Why haven't you wanted to go full-time by this point? Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be a flipper reseller business as my primary thing, because I don't get that much joy from it. I don't find it super, super interesting. And that's no offense to anyone else. And I prefer collecting. Like, I prefer setting collection goals and trying to build them. And, then I enjoy just making profit from buying and selling. If I were to do that, I probably wouldn't do it in Pokemon. Like, there would be other things that I might do. And I'd rather make my money in other ways, and then, keep this hobby as a hobby or a side hustle or a side job. Even though I have talked to Dan about it candidly, about, is that something that, where I would just retire basically and do that, a little bit here and there. But it just doesn't appeal to me or interest me that much. And I don't have confidence that the way that I do things, because I don't want to do things that I don't enjoy. Like dealing with like I don't really feel like getting in with distributors, buying a bunch of modern product and then putting it on Troll and Toad Evo and making like $5-10 a box, and that being like my business. Like, it just doesn't, it's not, like, I've had ideas of maybe like going to rabbinical school or going into religious studies, or theology or philosophy again, or like, I want to do something that again, and I don't mean any insult to any other person. I know for myself, I don't think that it would bring fulfillment. I think that I would feel, the game element of it would be entertaining and interesting, and it would be much better than doing a job where I had a boss that I, hated or disliked, but I don't think it would be super fulfilling in the long run. All right, let's move on. I don't want to, I mean to talk badly about it in any way. Unintentional. PokeVest says, how do you feel about PSA 9 level X's? PSA 10 prices are definitely getting high, but 9s are still $100, $200. Yeah, I mean, given how rare those sets are, I don't think it's crazy that they're sort of similar prices to a lot of like WOTC first edition holos. But I also don't look at it and I think these are slam dunk home runs. My concern is just the long-term interest and demand for those eras. And will that grow over time or will that stagnate? But given the rarity and the prices of the booster boxes and the difficulty to find booster boxes or grade more of those, I think that I don't think it's crazy that they're $100, $200. And I certainly think when I look at those and I compare them to like modern slabs that are going for $100 to $200, I'm amazed at how cheap level X's are, given how much rarer they are. But that's just, comes down to demand. People just don't want those right now as much, evidently, obviously, Pricey Pokemon says, hey, Jake, hope you're well. Glad I can catch another live. Would like to know your opinion. Do you think the Logan Paul first edition base auctions are going to stay low or run high at the end? I have no idea. I'll be watching with you. He personally thinks that they will stay the low sub 7K. Yeah, I mean, I would be surprised if they went, super, super high again, unless it's again, I think last time it was a lot of crypto influencers who just wanted to probably just be on Logan Paul's good side or had talked to Logan Paul and just wanted to be involved in that sort of club and that sort of crew because there's a lot of clout and money to be made in sort of the NFT crypto world. So paying that for a Pokemon, product was nothing. Alex P, what's your opinion on WOTC sealed boxes and its actual rarity? Some say there's much more out there than we think. Good time to buy, room for potential growth or continuing downward trend. Yeah, so similar question to what was asked before. So when people say, some say there's way more out there than we think, right? It's like, what do we mean by that? Well, when people were coming to me and saying, I can't imagine that there's more than like 500 more like unlimited booster boxes or jungle boxes in the world, like people were coming to me and saying that I had that reaction, right? It was like, it's way more than you think. And when a number of people are spreading that information or feel that way, then that's my reaction to that. But now, how much are people think? Like maybe the market is actually thinking that there's more than there really is, or they're more worried than they actually should be. Nobody knows how many there are. No one could know because there are too many and they're in too many different collections across the world. And then nobody knows how many more are going to hit the market. So one thing I would be tracking if you're very serious. So, okay, let me give you some actionable, advice here. If you're very serious about buying this, you need to do and this isn't directed at Alex, anyone out there, do the work of tracking the market. So how many are coming on the market? Are less and less coming on the market now than there used to be? Is it slowing down? Are they trending up in price? Are they trending down in price? Watch a few auctions, see how they go. Watch auctions in different places. If you see them stabilizing at a price point for a while and you see that not a lot more are coming on the market, probably a good time to pick up, at least in the short run. Now you could get unlucky and someone could offload 15 of them in an auction when you could have gotten it cheaper, but that's not on you. You can't predict things like that. So that's what I would say. They're great products. They got way overvalued. Now they're much better to buy now. They're much more reasonable. Do they have huge upside growth? I have no idea. I feel the same way about about vintage PSA cards, you know. Java Akuma Pokemon says, hey, Jake and chat, good afternoon. Good afternoon to you as well. We will definitely get you on the channel at some point. You people should go check out your channel if they could. So many people that I want to get on the channel eventually, just for conversations and talk. I really want to highlight as many channels as I possibly can through this channel. Will Chamberlain says, hey, Jake, thanks for doing these Q&A talks. I really enjoy these. Question, do you spec on Modern within 2 years of release, Pokemon promos? If so, what do you look for when doing so? Thanks. Yes, I mean, I have speculated / also collected, because I collect sealed and I like keeping at least one of each sealed thing for myself. And then also, but I also have spec'd a little bit on them. When Chilling Reign, Battle Styles got to like, I bought from one guy really cheap, and then I bought on eBay. I was actually able to, there was like a weekend, I forget now, but it was like I think it was like a 10% eBay bucks promo, 8%, something like that. And the guy was, there were people selling them for like $72 a box. And then I also got that 8% off, so I was able to get, a decent amount of it or some of it at a really cheap rate. That's why I went for it. Otherwise, I would not have bought any of it. I would have, because I, would have just waited. Outside of, I tend to like to buy one thing, I'm willing to pay a little bit higher for something if it's for like just my regular sealed collection, or if I want to open it and just like enjoy the set. But if I'm like really speccing on it, I think that I can do much better on raw and graded than I could ever do on any sealed product, just by being patient, by being very active, and by buying larger lots at below market. And I just know the pop reports so much. I follow the market so much that I just feel like that's the area that I really, really know in and out. The sealed booster boxes, nobody knows how many are printed. Nobody knows if Pokemon's going to print more. It just feels a lot more like harder to predict for me. So it just kind of goes back to that at the end of the day, Eric Stevens says, with the liquidity crunch hitting the stock crypto market, do you think it will hit Pokemon with a 50% type drawdown? So I think one thing that's interesting about Pokemon is it's actually, and collectibles and e-liquid assets, is sometimes items being e-liquid can actually help from the market imploding as quickly, because people can't as easily just like panic sell and get out of them. And so oftentimes people are like, they're stuck, they want to sell, but they end up just being like, yeah, I like this item, I care about this item, and it's hard to sell it and it's a pain to sell it, and I'm just going to figure out a way to afford it and keep it, when if they could just like press a button, they would get rid of it, like crypto or stocks. So I just throwing that point out there. But could it overall have a negative effect? Yeah, I mean, it was amazing earlier on in the boom how close Pokemon sort of mirrored the movements in crypto, and how many of like a lot of high-end cards were bought with crypto or partial crypto. I know a number of sales like that. So there was certainly a number of crypto people who were very early in on crypto, then coming into this market that I saw. So theoretically, it absolutely could negatively impact. I mean, it might be more closely tied with that market than it might be with the stock market. I really don't know. We're all just going to watch it together, Eric, but it's definitely something I would watch. And I think it's interesting to see if they're correlated. And then, of course, trying to figure out why they're correlated, causation is a whole nother thing. Jacob says, what framed kit is in your background, Jake? A framed kit? I don't know. Sorry, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Framed kit. Oh, is my framed jersey in the back? I didn't even notice that was peeking through. That's a Paul Pierce jersey from when I was a child. I got that autographed and when I was a little kid, and got it framed. let's see. If TCGs didn't exist, how would you spend your time? If TCGs didn't exist, I'm not. It's an interesting question because I'm not sure that I would still be collecting something. I might be collecting something else, but TCGs definitely got me into collecting as a kid, and I didn't collect anything for many years until I got back into this. So I'm not sure I'd be collecting, even though my dad is a huge collector of stuff. So it definitely runs in the genes, that I might have picked up something else. But yeah, I mean, I play a lot. I play pickup basketball 3 days a week with a bunch of guys, play lots of board games, video games. Obviously I work, and I am looking, I've been in like bands off and on. I'm looking to get back into a band now, probably do more music. Like I'd be okay. I mean, you know, it would suck because I love this stuff, but you know. Let's see. What are your thoughts? Julian asks, what are your thoughts on the possibility if someone was able to reprint vintage cards without any flaws? It's always a danger in, you know, something that my dad who collects art, you know, definitely it's a danger. Whenever there's money, there's going to be counterfeits. So, and counterfeits can get better over time. So it's something that, you know, hopefully our, you know, we develop, you know, companies like PSA and other places develop ways of catching on to these scams, of figuring out how they're doing it. And, you know, but there are going to be, I mean, it would be very, very unlikely if there weren't like extremely good looking cards, some really good looking cards in some PSA cases somewhere that people thought that everyone is always going to think are real, you know, and we're just never going to know. So, and it's the same thing with the art world. There are probably $20 million, $30 million paintings out there that are probably forgeries that the experts have just authenticated as real. And, you know, so it's real. That's how it works. Marty the Martian at Pokenomics, what is your favorite card out of Jungle, and when are you going to do a pack opening for the stream? Pack openings, yeah. I mean, it'd be fun to like open maybe some stuff again, like each set we could open and talk about each set, maybe something like that. My favorite card from Jungle, probably the Pidgeot, if I had to pick one, followed probably closely by the Snorlax. Those are probably my top two. Oh, wow. I'm like literally just at the part of the chat from like my first answer. Oh my God. Thank you guys for asking so many great questions. And sorry, I'm so slow as always. Oh, shoot. Somehow my Discord's on now. Let's see what else we got here. Sorry if I've missed your question too. It's not intentional. Infinite War says, do you think the hobby is being burned out by flashy new cards, alt arts, and things of the like? I feel like wall fatigue and everything being flashy is hurting the hobby. I wouldn't go so far to say that it's like hurting the hobby, but I think it's definitely going to be something that can affect price over time that I've talked a lot about. I think that in the next generation, they might create alt gold cards, or, who knows what or come up with something new that's also going to be really shiny and good looking, or maybe they do some throwback, more vintagey feels. People's preferences on art style is going to be very personal, but I mean, there's a reason like why, if you look at the sports card world and what is valuable, or the comic book world and what is valuable, it's often the plainest, most simplest original designs and original types of card format that have gone on to be so much more valuable than anything super colorful or fancy. So it's that's just what I would say there. So I think that I wouldn't underestimate the power of simplistic or more simplistic art in the long run on people really enjoying that and liking that. And the fact that a lot of flashiness can be both like really cool and enjoyable, but also if they overdo it, it can make it not special. And what can actually be special is the more simplistic, right? So collectors like rarity. They like surprise. They like things that are new. They like things that are hard to get. They like things that, let's see. Nutty says, hey, Jake, the traditional bear market is intensifying. You think it will hit an apex that will cause a capitulation in all asset classes in the near future? How bad do you think Pokemon will be impacted? Yeah, it's a great question that I do not know the answer to. We'll just have to watch it together, Nutty. I appreciate the question, but I'd be lying if I can't really come up with something smart to say. It's something that I've talked a lot about with my father. And before I put a lot of money, before I put a lot of money into Pokemon, I asked my dad. My dad had a long conversation about collectibles and his experiences with collectibles and how collectibles have done historically in his life during bear markets, in the stock market or the real estate market. And he told me that not all, but that different bear markets, it acted differently and responded differently. And then different collectibles that he collected, or different antiques that he collected, some did well, some did okay, and then some got decimated. So the short answer is he didn't know. And he's been doing this a lot longer than any person probably in this chat has been doing this. And so that's, I guess, what I would say is I certainly don't know, as someone who doesn't have neither experience as him. I've read a number of books on collectibles and antiques, and again, no predictable pattern. Unfortunately, we can come here and we can theorize and we can say, well, the usual thing that some person throws out is like, well, why would people ever buy a card if they could barely afford food? And it's like, yeah, probably right. But, the market can go down a lot while people can still afford food. It really depends on how, are massive amounts of people losing their job? Is there unemployment? Is there universal basic income? All those types of factors could mitigate, the effects that it might have on like a lower socioeconomic to middle socioeconomic, like pop culture collectible, like Pokemon. Willpower asks, Jake, how will base/WOTC do in 20 to 30 years as younger generations get into the hobby and the current 25 to 40-year-old collectors get out of the hobby? I think very likely it will be the most popular overall with I think every generation will like the stuff they grew up with as a kid, maybe the most, and then the second most will probably be the original, if I had to guess. But nothing's guaranteed. But I would base that off of other hobbies, and that the originals tend to have the highest value, and high-end collectors want the most expensive things, and the stuff that the consensus has decided is the most expensive. That's what I would say. What do we got here? What do you think about, Crypto says, what do you think about the Stormfront secret rare Charmander line? Yeah, really cool cards. I think I love the Charizard in particular, but I like the other two as well. I wouldn't say they're undervalued though. I mean, they're expensive, fairly expensive. Again, do I think they're crazy overvalued? Do I think there are other things that are more overvalued? Sure. But really cool cards, solid cards, pretty niche, but particularly that Charizard, just having that green wing, that reprint, but definitely not reprint of the base set, reimagining of the base set Charizard. Like that card is so much cooler to me than reprinted Charizard. It's like I cannot even tell you, but to each their own. It's very subjective. It's definitely one of my favorite Charizards. I also love the Plasma Charizard. To throw another Charizard out there, I really like. What do we got here? Eddie asked, do you think Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Magic are still the TCG's big three? I believe so by the numbers. I'm not sure what would have surpassed or if anything is closing, getting closer to Yu-Gi-Oh, but certainly at this point I would say so for TCGs. Cyber Urchin's Pokemon for real. I can't help it. Oh wait, not a question. Sorry. Hey Connor, nice to see you. Grant Kearney says, how do we define vintage today? Yeah, right now, probably most people either think of Pokemon in 3 eras and define vintage as like original Nintendo EX era earlier, or just WOTC. And then the middle generation being either like Diamond and Pearl through like maybe Black and White to maybe like halfway through X and Y. And then modern being like the second half of X and Y, to Sword and Shield. But again, there's no set definition. So once we have more time, like once the hobby gets a lot older, as long as it becomes more established and people are still interested and into it, you'll see the eras be defined a lot more universally. And they tend to be defined on rarity, price differences, things like that. So I think we need more time to figure out where it makes sense to. But at the end of the day, it's just semantics. ATB says, have you ever speculated in sealed Lego? I have not, but Rafi does, who's started this channel with me, friend of mine, for those who don't know. And Rafi does speculate on sealed Lego. I never got into it. I loved Lego as a kid, but I didn't collect Lego as a kid. So I guess I just don't have that like collector vibe or feeling or want to collect Lego. But like, if I had like a few, particularly like some Star Wars stuff, like I would definitely display it and it would be sweet. Like, I think Lego's cool. And what's cool about Lego is like it's like Star Wars and Lego, like I like both of those brands. So I'm kind of, let's see. Do I ever plan on checking out Digimon TCG? Maybe. I keep saying that I will, and then I just like haven't gone around to it that much. But I will soon. Maybe. Sorry, I'm like rolling over bubble wrap right now. I need to clean this room. Matt says, do you think there are cards that are still high risk, high reward investment? Yeah, maybe. I mean, if we're strictly defining investment as like this is the best thing you could do in the world with your money. Like, like it's really that good. It's like has the potential to be that good, or like one of the best things you could put your money into. Maybe. But probably not, probably not worth the risk. It's more, again, it's more just for people who like absolutely love this stuff, and it's awesome to be able to like make some money with a hobby that you love. James Rowlett says, hi, Jake, what is your favorite set in your collection? Also, what is the card you love the most? Doesn't have to be the most valuable. My favorite set in my collection. I mean, it definitely changes from time to time, and often is like, gosh, do I have one favorite set in my whole collection? I mean, what pops into my head is my Worlds promo. If we count, it's not really a set, but that is something I'm proud of just because I just love those tournaments. I love the arts. I love that they're from different cities. I love the history, and it has been really hard accumulating them over a period. And I've just really enjoyed it. I really like Jungle. I really like Gym Challenge. E-Series, all three of those sets were really fun to build out. A Versus Series has got to be up there for me. Trying to complete that set for the first time was super fun. So many great arts. There's just too many to count, because like every time I name one, I think of like three more that I really like. So I like Pokemon cards. I like a lot of the different sets, and I love collecting. So there isn't just one thing. And what card I love the most? I don't have one card that I love the most. I have like things on my wall where I like put up my cards, and I'm constantly replacing them. So I just couldn't pick one. Grant's now talking about the SM Pratt video again. Sorry, I answered this question a long time ago. He's saying that Pratt didn't define modern, but he told us that modern is not an investment while sitting in front of a lot of modern product. Oh, okay. I'll have to go check out the video. And again, it definitely, right, Grant, it goes back to, and this is why, like, when Alex was on Nostalgianomics, like I've made a number of videos on my channel saying that I think you can make money on modern, and I've talked a ton about how to make money on modern. So, but when we call something investable or an investment, what do we mean by that? Are we saying it's a better investment than stocks, a better investment than real estate, worth the risk, a safer one, part of any portfolio that you should have? Or is it something that is fun, enjoyable, and could possibly make you money? Or at least, as you said right here, Grant, like at least help, at least you'll beat inflation doing it, or hopefully will beat inflation. And I think that those are very different expectations. And I don't know what's going to happen. So, there's a lot of people out there that think way too black and white on that issue. If you tell them that you don't think that modern investing Pokemon is if you say that that's risky and probably you should put your money in the SP 500 instead, their brain hears, this guy hates modern and thinks you can't possibly make money on it. It's unfortunate. Versus thinking something like, oh, like he doesn't think that modern makes as much sense as I do. He thinks it's more risky than me, and he's entitled to his opinion, and I'm entitled to mine. Like that's how I would hope people would feel. Like you're absolutely like, I hope you make money, by the way. If you are sitting on lots of sealed modern in your house, in your closet, that would be awesome if it went up in value by a lot and you made a lot of money. Like, I think people also feel like I'm like hating on them or I'm wishing them failure or something when I'm just expressing my concern or the risk. The reality is, like, I really hope you make a lot of money, because one, that would just be great for the hobby, because it just means the hobby is doing extremely well and that they didn't overprint things. And two, like, I wish you success and that in whatever you do, and that, that you do well, I just hope that the people who don't buy it from you then lose money or whatever, but eventually it's kind of like, who's going to not make money, or, but it's all part of it, I suppose. SA says, hi, Jake. I was wondering, why do you think that a 20-year-old Jolteon has space to grow while a modern card doesn't, since the Jolteon had more than 20 years to grow? So specifically, I think that a vintage card that's selling for $1,200 in a PSA 10 first edition. So in my last video, I talked a little bit about this Jolteon as compared to like a $750, $800 VMAX Umbreon alt art. And my point was just that, the prices aren't that different. And on the one hand, you're getting a card, just as you said, that took 20 years. We could say, I don't like that way of thinking about it, because it's not like it took 20 years. It really took, most of the growth happened in a year. And it just happened to be, there's a lot of demand that finally, like, these cards can move up extremely quickly. So, but if we want to think of it that way, it took 20 years to grow or whatever. It's more about price point, right? So there are 126 of those cards graded PSA 10. Okay. And it took 20 years, whatever we can say, to grade that. That's not a good way to think of it either, because, again, most of those cards have been graded in the last 8 to 10 years. Okay. But, the last 8 to 10 years, we've had 120 some graded, right? And a very small percentage of the cards that exist in the world of first edition Jolteons will ever grade that PSA 10. Whereas the Umbreon VMAX, they're 550 some, probably almost 600, now, that are graded PSA 10 already. That doesn't include all the CGC ones that are also going to be graded. But they're already 550 PSA 10s, and they're only 50 PSA 9s, which shows you that it's extremely easy to grade. It comes out of a box that's only $180 versus a box that's $12,000 that's being opened way less. There's going to be way more continue to be open. So it's not so much. Whereas then I talked about like the Zacian Zamazenta gold card from Sword and Shield base is $40 in a PSA 10 right now. Like, that card to me has a lot more room to grow than a $750 card when there's already that many copies. And so when you have an original card like Jolteon, which is an original 151 old card, that there aren't going to be that many more 10s, because there's so many fewer 10s, it can grow much more. And into the future, it can grow much more. It doesn't have to do with age. It has to do with supply versus demand. It doesn't matter how old something is. It matters how rare it is versus the amount of demand. So hopefully that makes sense to people. This is definitely an important concept to understand. It's why the whole like modern versus vintage debate doesn't make a lot of sense. But the reason why a lot of people talk modern versus vintage is because there's very few things in modern that are not similar to that Umbreon, in the sense that they are very easy to get 10s. There's going to be very little attrition rate because everyone's keeping it in good quality, and very few of them have been graded yet. And there's going to be, and we're not talking about sealed here. We're just talking about singles. So, but I also said in that video a number of times that it doesn't matter what I think or what any one person thinks. And if the demand is way, way, way more for that Umbreon could grow way more than the Jolteon. But that's not because it took a long time for the Jolteon to grow. It's not because of what you're saying here. It's just because the demand would have to be so much higher for that Umbreon. And it could be. Elle said, your recent live video, you said you didn't see Pokemon as investing and seemed like you thought it had peaked. Is that accurate? It's not. So the second part is not. So do I think Pokemon has peaked right now forever? No. What I said is that I think it's probably, I think probably we won't ever see a humongous growth period again, but that doesn't mean that, one, that doesn't mean that we won't, because it's possible. And two, it doesn't mean that it won't steadily grow over time with periods of down periods. So I don't know the answer to that. When I said that Pokemon isn't as investable as the S&P 500 or something like that, I just mean that the level of risk probably doesn't justify the investment, like versus investing into something that has less risk, even if the upside is potentially less, even though I'm not sure the upside is so much less in something like that than, if you're buying a $15,000, $20,000 card, the upside of that may not be that great depending on the card. So whatever. But I hope that that's clear, those nuances to people. Someone saying that something isn't investable or isn't a good investment is not telling you that he doesn't think it's going to go up or that you might make money. There's a lot more factors that go into deciding if something is a good investment or a better investment than something else. Pokemon Classics. Nice to see you too. Thanks for hanging out. Elle says, why do you have a Pokemon investing Patreon and channel, as it says in the description, but you don't believe Pokemon is an investment? So that's interesting if I say it in the description of the channel. Do I call this an investing channel? I might. I honestly, guys, I put zero thought into any of that. One of the main reasons I use the word investing, particularly in titles and things like that, is that's the only way that people will click on videos. And that is what most people will type in and are looking for. And so particularly as I was trying to grow the channel in the beginning, I might have used that as a way to like get people in to hear what I thought would actually help them, which was like moderate, reasonable market talk. But fundamentally, like, I believe that my knowledge and my experience and my expertise, if you are interested in purchasing Pokemon cards at good value and navigating this market, is valuable to listen and to listen to or take into account or engage with. Okay. So that's the purpose of the Patreon, is for people who might believe that. Some people will not believe that. Some people believe that nobody knows better than anyone else. Nobody can know anything. So, paying for anyone's time or expertise or knowledge is silly, and that's, everyone has a right to their own opinion. But me saying that if someone in my Patreon, and this has never happened, but if someone came to me on my Patreon, and every time I talk to someone, I say this, I'm very clear about it. If someone came to me and said, I want to make a lot of money doing this, I don't care about Pokemon, all these types of things, the first thing out of my mouth would be like, I think you can probably, this is not for you. And there'd be lots of other ways, but it's your money and I'll tell you what I think or what I would do, I guess it doesn't seem conflicting at all to me. It seems very clear, just because now, when you spend a lot of money on items like this, what you want as a collector, most people want as a collector, is to spend as little money as possible to get as much as they possibly can, right? And that's what I'm helping people do, is, ideally, or trying to, right? So I'm not helping people liquidate hopefully their stock funds to speculate on Pokemon cards as the fundamental portion of their plan to get wealthy and very rich. Okay. So hopefully that's clear. Ooh, I just lost where I was. Come on. Looks like we jumped to the bottom. And I want to be clear too with that, like, that doesn't mean that I don't think that what I'm saying is worthless, or that analyzing the market cannot help you perform better than the next person, in terms of, it doesn't mean that you're ever going to make as much money as you might put in an index fund, or that the risk is worth it. But if you're going to be in this market anyway, and you really want to collect and engage and be here, understanding the market and the ins and outs of the market is going to help you perform better than the next person who doesn't know anything, very likely. That's the sort of idea. Dre says, hey, Pokenomics, I'm sure you've been asked this 100 times, but any plans to do a video with Rudy? So I asked Rudy once if he would come on the channel, and he told me that he doesn't do interviews with anyone. You know, I know he's watched this channel before and commented a few times, and you know, I've talked with him, you know, back when I was friends with, you know, and a bit closer, and, you know, I still am friends with, but, you know, Mike mentioned once, like, you know, would it be cool to have Rudy on and for the three of us to talk and these types of things? And, you know, that would be cool someday. But you know, Rudy has a tight knit circle that he talks to. And if he came on my channel, it would probably also open up the floodgates of all sorts of other people. And, you know, he doesn't know me. He doesn't owe me anything, and he might, you know, not trust me or not trust random people, you know, so who knows what his reasons are exactly. But I certainly took zero offense, and I get it as someone who gets asked a bunch for people to come on and to go, you know, that it's perfectly reasonable when someone just decides that, you know, I don't want to have that conversation, or it's just not something that I want to open myself up to. So let's see. Can says, hey, Jake, Z&G wants to know why all Pokemon content is boring. I know. We were talking about that the other day. I think he's being a little harsh and kind of hating on stuff, but he's entitled to his opinion. Yeah, no, I do want to try. I've had some ideas to spice things up, or you know, try and continue to make things interesting. So it's definitely a goal of mine. But I mean, I still find this stuff really interesting, and these conversations interesting, and I love hanging out with people. So, you know, to each their own. And also I think it's cool to like take breaks and then come back and enjoy something. I think, and this is nothing to do with Z, but people get really heated when like they're not thoroughly entertained all the time. And it's a little bit of a weird thing, because reflect on it, like you have so many options, just like go watch something that entertains you and then come back to this and go to that. It's a very strange take. And it's that yucking on someone else's yum. Like, why are you being mean and negative and critical? You know, now if someone is doing something bad, you know, or hurting people, that's one thing, but you know, let's see. Cam says, if you had to open 5K worth of sealed, oh no, wait, sorry. One more question before that. ABC asks, hi, weird question, but if I buy 4 trophy cards like the Championship Arena and PSA 5, or 1 in PSA 10, which of the 2 options will have the better return? No idea is the obvious answer. I mean, the immediate thing would be price point. But I mean, one thing that's nice about buying the multiple is that people can get into them at a little bit cheaper, which can be nice, and you can get into them a little bit cheaper. The downside of that is then you have to sell more of them. It might be more difficult to sell more. The positive of buying the 110 could be that the ultra wealthy might only want the best of the best of the best, and then pay a huge premium of the best, even of a trophy card. I know for me as a collector, I'm much more interested in, much more interested in just owning the card. I like absolute rarity over condition rarity. Obviously, if you can get both, that's great. But that's what I would say about that. But at the end of the day, it's you'd have to show me the exact card, show me the exact prices, and then I could tell you which one I would buy and why. But that doesn't mean that I'm right. Cam B8s, if you had to open Cam, is this Z&G's Cam, by the way? If you had to open 5K worth of sealed product with the intention of making as much of that money back as possible, what would you open? I think I do Japanese starter decks personally. Yeah, that's interesting to do Japanese starter decks. I was actually buying up some like graded Japanese, some of the graded Japanese starter deck cards, and I was thinking about, the price of these sealed versus the graded. It's kind of interesting. It's pretty niche thing there though. 5,000 worth of sealed product. Okay, let me answer this seriously. With the intention of making as much of that money back as possible, what would you open? It's a good question. Trying to think through my options right now. When commons and uncommons used to be valuable, my answer would have been jungle. There was a while where I like almost considered boost, because I've always wanted to open it, just like opening up first edition jungle box, because the jungle commons uncommons are worth so much that I was like, I could like almost break even potentially or make money if I got really lucky. Nothing's coming to mind, Cam. And again, this shows my lack of expertise as well on like a lot of like niche sealed items. Everything that is coming to mind is bad. I'm thinking of like some maybe, honestly, like probably like battle styles and chilling reign right now, because you could probably like, if you got a couple cards and maybe like waited till the prices came down and you graded them, you might be able to get like $70 out eventually with once you grade a couple of the hits. And if you happen to get like a really good card, maybe you'd even make a little bit of money and the downside risk would be so low. But I guess you're saying you have to open up 5,000 worth. Ugh, that's a terribly tough question. I'm not sure. It's so bad. It's all so bad. But my instinct might be to just open up the cheapest thing like that. And then I'm sure, like, if we want to get really niche with it, we could say they're like, maybe I try to open up some like, of like the Rumble, Japanese, and I grade some of those, or I open up some of the, like those Pokecard creator packs or something. And I hope for some 9s and 10s, even though they often come out of the pack badly, but you can get those sealed packs and then you get the whole run in there, and you might be able to make money in both those ways if you're able to get some 10s. Although from my experience with those Rumbles and also the Pokecard creator, they can be pretty beat up. So, Roy says, Jake, what's your take on collecting empty booster packs in TCGs? One thing I like to do is I like to, every time I pull a hit, I try to save the pack and I put the pack art in my binders. I put the actual pack that I opened the hit card from, I put that pack with my binder where I actually have the card. And that's just like a fun way for me to collect. And it reminds me of that moment of opening, and I have the actual pack that it came from. And it's just sort of like a cool personal thing for me. That looks really nice on the binder and brings back that memory. As far as like collecting, like buying random packs from people, seems fine with me, like, why not? Like, they're cool. It's cool to have some of that old stuff. I like the empty boxes quite a bit, if you want to display them, or so, I mean, you can buy all of those empty boxes instead of buying the sealed boxes and display them, and they will look the exact same. So, it's an amazingly cheap way of displaying the actual original booster box art, right? Let's see. Mike says, hey, Jake, what do you think about Skyridge, Acropolis, and Expedition? What do I think about Skyridge, Acropolis, and Expedition? I'm a fan. Definitely a fan. Quentin Devaney says, hey, Jake, are you still bullish on Middle Earth? Yeah, so I mean, in this environment, no. I mean, I don't know what I've said on Middle Earth in the past. I've always liked Middle Earth. I do think that Middle Earth is pretty cool. It's a cool card game. I really like Lord of the Rings, and some of that product is pretty rare. I think it's a pretty fun thing to collect and enjoy and play. So definitely a fan of it. I mean, LOTR is cool too. But if I had to pick just one, I'd pick Middle Earth. I know I have both of those things behind me. I'm not sure I'm like bullish in this environment that it's going to like stonk up or something like that. It would definitely take some influencers talking about it or getting people into it, I think. But it's a strong market. A lot of these markets, including like Score DBZ, like the people in the market, like they love this stuff. They're not going anywhere, and there isn't that much of it. So it's still, although it's very niche, it's quite valuable. Jonathan Peterson says, "Hey Jake, if you could do this again in another life, what would you do / not do different? If I could do my life over or do like the Pokemon stuff over, I guess I'll answer it for Pokemon. I mean, nothing really. I think I've done fine. I mean, I don't think it's like reasonable to regret, I mean, as a, you can always say like, I wish I put even more money in, but like, I already put like enough money in. It would have been stupid to put any more money into Pokemon than I did. So, no regrets there. And I'm happy with the amount that I sold. I'm fine that I didn't sell more. I really like this stuff. And, I'm in a position where now I can continue to collect and buy and, so. Johnny Boy said, if a new YouTube channel started about Pokemon, what specifics would interest you and get you into watching? Just someone nice, reasonable, kind, smart, passionate, wants to share their opinions, data-driven or, data-oriented, open to different ideas, to discussing different topics, maybe not a jerk, not hard-headed, not rude. All that type of stuff is what I would look for in a person or a channel. There are people some people with really small channels that really, surprise me. Like someone like Connor who came on yesterday, like his talks and the stuff he does, like Connor's like super smart and super knowledgeable and loves this stuff and also has like a pretty good background in like market and finance and is able to talk about it, and yet his channel is going to be quite a bit smaller than like, a number of others that might not have that. So, but what I like and what I'm interested in is going to differ, from other people. But there are plenty of channels that have, many subscribers that, that would interest me less than his. And, Dre says, do I think that TBCI will ever venture into NFTs? Maybe something like each base set card is sold as a one-of-one NFT. It would be insane if they did. That would be wild, Dre. I think that I would say like Starbucks is coming out with NFTs. Like, I think that if many companies come out with NFTs and we go more of this like virtual reality world where there's also virtual reality shopping and all sorts of things, and NFTs and the blockchain technology is like linked into all of that. Of course, Pokemon and every company, if there's money to be made, they're not going to be like, we morally don't like this, so we're not going to do it, and there's always risks, but like there's nothing unethical or problematic morally. Now there's the whole debate around the climate issues and the environmental issues. And I'm not an expert on that. I don't really want to get into that, but that's a whole nother thing. But, there isn't necessarily anything other than that potentially that's like super unethical about just the beauty of like the technology and the blockchain and the potential of it, So, I don't know why companies wouldn't get on board over time. The question is just like when and to what extent and what impact it'll have on everything. AP Sports Card says, do you think in the next few months we will have the populations mostly fleshed out on first edition WOTC holos in the PSA 8-9 range? Seems like the cards got pricey enough that most would have been sent by now. Probably not. Maybe more like the next 10 years. And then still probably the majority of them will just like never get graded, in like the particularly like we're talking 8s, unless the price gets real crazy. Like if the price gets over like $1,000 for like 8s, then maybe you have them all, but that'll be a really high price if that ever happens. T-What says, we're nowhere near there, obviously. T-What says, Epochonomics, Jake, if you were the PTC, what innovation or emphasis do you think would not just be lucrative, but beneficial for the long-term health and vitality of the hobby? I think just in general, appealing to collectors and people of all ages, teenagers, adults, young adults, kids, like, coming out with products and video games and movies and Netflix special, all sorts of things that are just going to keep the franchise alive and thriving, and be interesting for all ages, I think is what I would say. And I think one thing that could be really cool would be particularly like they could do like the video games really improving and more people of all ages getting involved in the video games and the characters and the lore and them really kind of expanding the world, the lore, maybe making it a little bit darker, or not necessarily darker, but a little bit more complex or sophisticated in some areas, and the gameplay a little bit more sophisticated. But it's you have to balance that. You don't want to do it. You don't want to change the fundamental feeling and nature of or cuteness and friendship of Pokemon either. So there might be a reason why they haven't, done that. Although I don't know. Like I think a Team Rocket movie would be sick about like, a little like getting into the world, maybe with a little bit more of darker action themes could be interesting, Or it could be like super awful and terrible and ruin a childhood thing that we all love. Like, who knows? Hey, Jake, been watching you from the start. Thank you for all the good advice. I see some Middle Earth on the back. Could you talk a bit about it? What do you collect? Yeah, I collect Middle Earth, LTR. I don't have too much to say about it. Like right now in the back, I think peeking out, I have the 2 boxes I have peeking out, and then some boxes behind it are the Wizards, which is the original set. And then I think got some Dragons, Dark Minions. I don't have any sealed Balrog, which are like the sealed decks that are sort of the rarest item. It was the last item. Often with these discontinued CCGs, these dead CCGs, often the last set or even the last few sets in some cases are the most expensive, the hardest ones to come by because they short printed them, because there was like no interest, or they like stopped printing them in the middle of it because the card game just ended. So got some White Hand back there, which is White Hand and Dragons are the easiest sets definitely to find. Wizards is probably next, which is the first set, but Wizards and Limited is not that easy to find. It's fairly expensive. And yeah, it's just some, I know a decent amount about Middle Earth. Jake, what's your favorite Chansey artwork? Chansey artwork. Chansey artwork, huh? It's a tough one. I'm not sure, honestly. It's probably just base set, to be honest. Matthew asks, what is the highest quantity? I'm going to go for another 15 minutes, by the way, guys. We're just going to keep this one a little bit shorter today. I'm going to try to do more videos, but probably make the lives a little shorter than I know our last 2 lives were very long. I think I went 4 hours the last time. What's your favorite? What's the highest quantity of a single card that you've ever owned at one time? I do not know the answer to that, but probably not that many. Maybe 30 of a card. Josh Slater says, historically, it seems like collectors gravitate more towards vintage over time as they mature and learn more. I think this market will follow that pattern, or are things different now? You know, I don't know the answer to that. I think in the long run, again, Wizards of the Coast is sort of its own unique thing, and this generation is going to have to compete with the next generation and the next generation and the next generation a lot more closely. So, yeah, I think people over time are going to the more weirdos who are like the higher end collectors, or the people who are more kind of super into it and want to collect the hardest stuff to find and the chasiest stuff, are going to go to that type of stuff for sure eventually. Johnny Boy says, do you think there are any basic principles you learned in your time in the hobby that you still hold as true that may not be since the bubble? Do you think there are any basic principles? I basically still hold like all the same principles about just like, and it'll never change, supply and demand. If you can figure out the supply and the demand and what that's going to look like over time, you'll be able to chart out or map out or try to predict, have some sense of where prices are going to be. And but trying to predict those things is next to impossible in some cases, particularly demand. And we've seen so much craziness with influencers these past couple of years. Okay. Ancient Mew says, do you love the Dragonite alt art from Evolving Skies as much as I do? I don't know. Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking of the Battle Styles one in my head. I had to look up just the regular V1. It's definitely super cute. I love Dragonite. I'm just pulling it up to take a look at it again. With the Fearos and the Spearos in the background. Yeah, it's super cute card. Gotta love it. I'm trying to think if I like this one or the Battle Styles. I'm pulling both of them up. Excuse me for the yawns. Pulling both of them up. Sorry, guys, be yawning. Let's see what else we got here just for the last couple questions of today. Okay. Oh my gosh, we have a lot more questions now. For some reason, they weren't showing before. I just refreshed. Sorry, I'm just trying to find our place. I don't want to skip questions if possible. So some of these questions I've already gotten before earlier, and so I'm going to skip them. Gravity says, Jake, how hard is it to grade Deoxys reverse holos? If you have any experience with this. I don't have much experience. I'm sure I've graded a couple. I did look into my Deoxys binder recently to see if there were any like more gradable cards, and I didn't really find any that were that great for whatever that's worth, but I don't have lots of experience, so I'm not sure. Professor Oak says, Jake, what do you think of PSA backlog coming back? Everyone was talking about it when it first started, but not many YouTubers have followed up on the effect of it yet. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I mean, it's like cards that massive amounts that came back, like when we're talking about like evolutions has plummeted in value. The raw stuff, I mean, crazy drops, hidden fates, big drops, vivid voltage, you know, things that tons of supply, particularly your sort of like lower end stuff, your you know, baby shiny amazing rare, you know, regular holo evolution cards, some of the secret rare, like those types of cards, because so many of them are graded, it really impacted the price, and we're still seeing more coming back. So I wouldn't expect those cards to go up in value too much, but it's going to depend on the rate at which the supply is being able to be eaten up. Now, we've also have not seen them go any lower, and it's gone up a little bit from over the last 3 months. I would say a lot of these cards are now selling $1 to $2 more graded, which is sounds like very little, but they were like $9, and now a lot of them are like $11, $12. And the fact that despite more of them coming back, that people are still buying them up. And now it could be businesses buying them up, speculating on them, trying to buy them out, and not necessarily collectors, and who knows how that'll work out. But they are still being eaten up, and it has not gone down to $5 a PSA slab or $4 a PSA slab yet. So we'll see. But it's definitely big, man, Professor. I mean, once those population reports start to slow down and the market isn't so flooded with all this stuff, if we get there, you could definitely see prices tick back up for a lot of these items and a lot of these modern graded cards too, potentially. But when PSA lowers its price again, then you're going to see probably a lot more graded, not of the super low stuff, but of that like $50-ish to $100 graded stuff, you will. So Pokin Fund says the people making money the most are predatory style investing. Ones who have a lot of funds available to buy well below market price 50 to 60% on someone forced to liquidate. That's a pretty rough take on people who are looking to buy under market, you know, to say that it's predatory. I think the predators were the ones who were telling those people to buy all of the cards and were pushing the price of everything up on, you know, and or who are lying to people, telling people that that these were phenomenal investments and that they could only go up. I think there's nothing predatory about buying items that are up for auction. You know, the person puts them up for auction and you buy them. I think, like, I get where you're coming from, but I think that like that's pretty rough, you know. So Jeff says, hey, what's up, Jake? One of your patrons here. Definitely enjoy the info you've always provided here and there too. I'll throw a question at you. What do you think of Metazoo's future? So I've talked about this, you know, some, and again, I think probably the fact that Steve Aoki's on board with it and owns 50% of the company, the fact that, you know, they have, you know, him and Mike got matching tattoos. They're all in, and there are lots of business partners, and they have lots of distributor connections and all sorts of things. I think that it has a chance to succeed. It depends how you're going to define success, but to continue on and do pretty well. You know, what are its chances that it's going to surpass Yu-Gi-Oh or Magic or something and become like number 2 to Pokemon? Probably very low. How low? I don't know. What are its chances that it's going to surpass Pokemon? Almost zero, but not impossible. It's certainly possible. It just would be, you know, it's a huge uphill climb, and they're just going to have to take over the minds and hearts of tons of kids and a whole generation. And I mean, it's a lot. That's an insanely tall ask. But, you know, if the card game specifically could get a really big player base and become popular, and they make a video game and they partner with Netflix and the comic book starts selling more broadly and widely, it could be very successful. do the current prices make sense? I don't know. Seems pretty risky, on the higher end items. And the lower end boxes and the lower end items doesn't seem that crazy risky. I think most likely if you're buying those boxes at $100 to $200, most likely they probably will go down. That if Metazoo doesn't work out, those boxes will be $20 to $40 to $50 in the next 5 years. And will be more of kind of like a novelty type, dead CCG, like so many other dead CCGs. And then maybe in the long run, it could develop a cult following, and because there aren't that many of them, the price could go up. But if the company becomes very, very successful and continues to grow and doubles and triples and quadruples and 10x's in size, those boxes will be worth quite a bit more, very likely, than $100. So you just have to decide what you think the future is going to be, and how much do you believe in the leadership and the game plan and the fact that they're, with Steve Aoki's money and Mike and Mike's leadership and a number of other things, that they're just going to be able to be successful and kind of weather the down periods, weather the storms, and come out on the other end, stronger and successful. Hey, Jake, the French UPC is currently €450. It was €800 at release. The English UPC is $350. Do you think the English UPC will be more valuable over time? I have no idea. Interesting question. Sorry, I didn't even know that. So giving me new information. I don't follow the truth is I'm not, I follow modern product, but I'm not like obsessed with it. So, knowing what the French UPC costs versus the English, I'm not at that level. So that's interesting. I didn't even know that there was a French UPC. Let's see what else we got here. Do I think it'll stay niche or become more mainstream for Metazoo? I guess it goes back to what I was saying before. There's a chance, right? It's probably, I would say, 30 to 40% chance it grows from here. I think it'll become bigger than it is now over time, but won't, and maybe, but won't, won't get over Yu-Gi-Oh! And then maybe a 5% chance it gets, 5-10% chance it gets over, maybe 5% chance it gets over Yu-Gi-Oh! And then maybe, less than a 1% chance it ever gets over Pokemon, if I were to throw random numbers out there. John says, Rudy posted a video that we are in a recession. Thoughts? Recessions are going to be defined different ways. You can define recessions by, GDP. You can define recessions by decrease in overall market size, stock market size. However we want to define the semantics of a recession. Certainly there's, quite a bit of negativity. We'll see. The one thing I will say, there are times when Rudy will have we're in a recession, and then a month later has we're in a bull market video, it's don't take too seriously what Rudy says. And with all due respect to Rudy, he's a smart, connected guy within the TCG world, but he does not know what is going to happen to global economics. Okay. I would definitely listen to him on TCGs and listen very closely. When we talk about any sort of global economic principles or anything, I would certainly listen and consider, but would be very careful, making any sort of big bets on whether Rudy thinks we're in a recession or not. Pokemon Reader says, Jake, I just watched S and Presley's video on modern investing. Someone in the comment was saying they bought 39 Evolving Skies booster boxes with their tax return. He believes he'll make at least 500 per box in 5 years. Thoughts? Yeah, I mean, the at least part, like, I mean, it depends how confident he is. Do I think that that could happen? Could. It could. Um, uh, what percentage chance do I think that's to happen if I were to like be forced at gunpoint? I don't even know how to quantify. I wouldn't even know how to start with something like that. I guess my mind goes to like I think I'll know more in a year, like a year or two. Like I want to see how this product. Like I would not expect another Black Swan, huge, crazy triple growth event. And so this is the way my mind works on this stuff. We're either in a period now where there's so many more investors now and people interested in keeping sealed product that the sealed product doesn't need these Black Swan events to triple in price. Like it will just go up more steadily over time. And so in 5 years, could it reach $500? That seems pretty high, but could it reach, $300 to $400? It could, right? Just with people slowly buying it up and people slowly opening it, and there just being lots and lots of interest and demand, and Pokemon not reprinting it to the ground, or continuing to reprint it through the years. So, and I think, and certainly the guy is totally in his rights to spend his tax return and gamble on it. If I were talking to the guy and the guy like was a jerk to me and said, you don't get it, man. Like it's a guarantee, like 100%, like it's going to happen. And I'm sure. And you just hate modern. That's why you don't like these types of things. It's so irritating and annoying. Like, then I like would be like push back against the guy. But if the guy was like, you know what, I think it's going to do that, and I'm willing to gamble, and it's fun, and I don't need this money, and blah blah blah, and I understand the risk, I'd be like, all the power to you, and I hope you're successful. So, I bought a decent amount of Evolving Skies at like that $95 to $100 box. Would I buy a bunch more at $180? Absolutely not for me. But that doesn't mean that I can tell the future and that I know that it's not going to do that. If I knew that it was going to go to 500 in 5 years, would I buy more of it at 180? Probably. But we just don't know that. And that's why I think the thinking is just so strange to me. And you cannot use this past year as proof that demand is going to stay this high. And we've just been through this so many times, this conversation. So, and I think what's frustrating about this debate is that, like, if he makes over $500, you're going to have people being like, see, like it was a guarantee. And then if he doesn't make $500, you're going to have people like being like, what an idiot for putting that in. When in reality, like investing is a risk and a gamble. And it's even if he's successful or unsuccessful, it's hard to judge whether it was a good investment or not. Like, I hope that point makes sense for people. And so if you're extremely hating on someone for making some prediction that is right or wrong, like just because they were right or wrong doesn't mean their prediction was stupid. Okay. And someone saying that in 5 years, there is some reasonable chance that Evolving Skies could reach $500 a box. It's not ridiculous because we've seen that happen recently, right? It would have been ridiculous if you said it 3, 4, 5 years ago. Of course, you would have been right on these current boxes, but you would have been a madman, which is part of my frustration with people who knew that some of these boxes were going to do that, at the same time, to be guaranteed or be sure that it's going to repeat, I think is silly, but to say that it might happen, it's possible. So that's just what I would say there. And can people just be nice to each other, right? If you think that that's going to happen, hopefully it does, and good for you. And if you don't, then, great. Let's see. Oh, chat is not refreshing anymore. All right.
No, great.
I said I was going to end a little bit ago, so I'm just going to look at the bottom, see if there's any last minute comment here, and otherwise we'll probably just end. ATP says stuff immediately going up after waves are sold out shows that there's still crazy demand. Completely agree, ATP. And that's why I don't think it's unreasonable to think that these booster boxes can hit these high prices in the next few years. It's not crazy. It's just also very risky because it could stop very quickly. That could stop happening. And that could either be because Pokemon just opens up the floodgates and just prints way, way more, or it could be suddenly booster boxes stop doing that. And so people stop speculating on it so much. And then when people stop speculating on it so much, and you just don't know how manipulated these markets are. I mean, look at what happened with Flesh and Blood, and look at how manipulated those what's it called boxes were, Monarch boxes were. Now, is it much, much harder to manipulate the Pokemon market? Do you need a lot more money? Yeah, absolutely. Because there weren't that many Monarch boxes. There are way, way, way more of these Pokemon boxes, but it's still, it's these stores and distributors and big sellers and big flippers and investors and sealed people, like they can quickly manipulate the price, and then people on YouTube can quickly, develop some narrative that isn't necessarily true. So you just have to be careful. All right, guys. I think I am going to end it there. Appreciate you all hanging out. As always, thank you for all the phenomenal questions. And I hope everyone has a great, great rest of your day. And just appreciate you tuning in and hanging out as always. If you continue to support the channel by subscribing, signing up for Patreon, clicking the eBay affiliate link below to support me, it is so greatly appreciated. And I will keep putting out the content, answering questions, having the discussion. All right. So I hope everyone else